Welcome back to another Maestro's Vibe. On this vibe, we are joined by Geri and Aoki Davidson. We are so excited to have you here. We will be diving into social emotional learning and how that journey has changed the way that we do things in the classroom. I'm Kev on the ones and twos.
And this is Karina Hernandez. So happy to be back. And we are with...
Aloha, this is Juan Jefe on the microphone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to have another highly esteemed Kona royalty in the house here today. Not just an amazing and excellent teacher, but also raising future teachers that are also changing the world. I wanted to give a moment and open up the space for you, Geri Ann. Welcome to our show officially.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so
much.
much.
And I know I just rolled out that red carpet for you personally, and I've only known your work from afar. Please, if you could just share a little bit more about your role here in education, and I'm sure Kevin's got even more connections with you.
So thank you again for having me. I have been in education now. This is my 34th year. And all at Kahakai Elementary School. Yeah, I started in 1986. I was hired as a music teacher. I do not, if any of you know me, I do not do music. That was like, I can't teach music. I don't know why you're hiring me for music. And so they changed it. After they hired me, the principal said, what would you feel comfortable teaching? And I said, anything but music. And so they changed my line, because it was a research position. They changed my line to half like a reading coach for students who needed extra help in reading, and half EL coordinator.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What an awesome journey you've had. And I am so lucky to work alongside you in 5th grade. So your journey has gone through a lot of grade levels. So you've affected a lot of kids. And I'll even be playing basketball with some of my friends, and they'll be like, when I tell them I work at Kaha Kai, they'll ask about you and ask if you're still teaching. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she taught everyone in the community here in Kona. So I am just so honored to have you here and get to work alongside you every single day. And you talked about someone who's been kind of really inspirational for yourself and myself, and that was our ex-principal, Jessica Yamasawa. I'd love for you to share a little bit of knowledge from what you have gained from her that you still apply in your work.
Yeah, she was very, very influential in, I think, my growth about half, maybe a little bit more than halfway through my career. She made me go out of my comfort zone a lot. You know, she pushed me to do things that I thought I would never do. One being, I TA'd in the counseling position at Kawakai for 6 years, which that was never a thought for me to go out of the classroom to do counseling, but they needed a counselor at that point, and so she asked if I would do it, and I ended up being in that position for 6 years, which was amazing, and I'm glad I did it now that I look back on it. The other thing she had me do was start a reading, like a reading lab for kids, where they would come to do, we would pull kids out for tutoring. So I was in charge of all the tutors and did that for a long time. And then she changed me one year to be in 2nd grade, which I never wanted to go lower than 3rd grade. And she's like, no, we need you there, go. I mean, she kind of like literally pushed me out the door for a lot of things. But I am so grateful, because I think without that, I wouldn't have seen how important it is to keep growing as a person and as an educator, and kind of going out of your comfort zone to keep doing better things for students. You know, her one model to me was always ask yourself, is this what's best for students? Is this what's best for kids? And if the answer is yes, then do it. You know, it won't hurt you to do it if it's in the child's best interest. So that was something I take with me every day. the other thing she taught me was, which is a harder thing for me, I don't think I've quite gotten there yet, is she always says truth over harmony. If you want to see growth in anybody, whether it be your students or colleagues or yourself, you need to always have truth over harmony. And for me, I'm a very harmony person. Like I like calm, so that's been a hard part. But I always hear her voice in the back of my mind, and I am always grateful for the lessons she left with us.
Wow, that's really cool. And also, you get to pass those lessons as well. I know we had your daughter here on the podcast before, and she's an educator um, in the continental US. So that's like, the how you've influenced different generations, like Kev was mentioned earlier. And my connection to you, other than knowing you through Kevin, it's also being a part of Delta Kappa Gamma, DKG. That's a sorority for us educators. And it's been amazing to have gotten to know you there through that sorority as well. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you're sharing, for making time to be here with us. We truly appreciate it. And we would also like to know, since you're in the classroom, how has distance learning been going for you?
Well, when it first started, I was very apprehensive, and I was very, I think, worried, right, about like everybody else. How was it going to go, and how could this be good, or, how could it be positive? But I have to say it's been much more enjoyable than I thought it would be. And I am grateful every day that I get to still do what I love, even if it's over a screen. And I am thankful that I have my team. My fifth grade team is so supportive, and that we work together is such a great help. I mean, I can't imagine not having people to work with and to share the workload and to throw ideas around. But I am most grateful, I think, for the students who show up every single day. Like, I have 16 kids, and every day 16 of them show up, and they have such a great attitude. They have that attitude of, I will try. Some of it is hard for them. They're like in and out because of connectivity, or because, like one of my students got pulled to Ocean View in the middle of the week, but he still tried to jump on, even if, he was having a hard time with the internet. I mean, I just give them so many props for just showing up. I mean, it's amazing. And to be honest, I kind of am enjoying teaching through distance learning, because I get to be creative in what I'm doing. I get to do different things that I would not have done in the classroom. And my hope is that maybe it'll carry over even when we get back. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, thank you for sharing. I love the jam boards that you share, the different activities. I know that Halloween just passed, and you had an activity where the students like created an outfit for you, and I thought, what a great idea! And just the things that you share, I want to say thank you. I am always love to check your Instagram or your Facebook just to see like what is the message that you're giving the kids, and the kids giving back. So you provide different prompts, and then they respond. And sometimes it's coming from a fifth grader, they are so, the message that they give to the world is so beautiful. And I just want to say thank you. I'm always looking out for the things that you post, because I find it so inspirational, and you're giving me great ideas to apply in the classroom as well.
Oh, I'm glad. It's fun. That's one thing I want to do, is keep it fun, right? And fun for them and fun for me as well.
Fun school?
Yeah.
All right.
You have to love school, right? Otherwise, why come?
I think, and I think it's great to hear those positive relationships, and not everyone has that. Not every one of our listeners, not every one of our hosts has those positive relationships. And I think it can be something for us to reflect on during this time, because we're in it for the long haul. There aren't many teachers here. There aren't many more new teachers coming here. And I think we have a lot to learn from each other. And it's inspirational, like Karina said, to see how much you're learning and how much you're continuing to share 34 years into this profession. That, I think that's an inspirational figure, and I think that is why I called you Kona royalty. And I know there's a lot of teachers like you out here who are doing amazing things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and one big thing that I noticed that you had brought up in the notes was a shift, like a shift in how you think about the classroom.
For sure, for sure.
What does it
Um,
look like?
when I started teaching many moons ago, in my mind, I think it was really, that whole thing about the advice I got when I first got my first job was don't smile until after first quarter, like really be strict with them, let them know that you're the teacher, let them know that these are your rules and they need to follow the rules. Um, which I want to apologize to all my former students, like Drew Kanuha and Aaron Amontiad, who had me in the first few years of their lives. I'm so sorry. Um, I still love you, but I was very hard on them. And I think as I went through years of teaching and years of reading about like what child development looks like and how to treat children, um, my whole shift of thinking went from being this person in charge of the classroom, being the one that told them what they needed to do, to building that really, really strong relationship with the child, um, figuring out what the child needs, being more loving and open, um, and still holding them to high expectations at the same time, but not being like so rigid in my thinking, So um, being more forgiving, being more compassionate, to every child's needs instead of this is just how it is for the class and this is how it's going to be. But this is what you need. Okay, then my thinking is going to be different for you versus this child over here. So I think it's just changed in the sense that I'm trying to be a little bit more empathetic to every child, and just be able to build those relationships so that they feel like they can come to me, or they feel like that it's an open space for them to learn versus it's just my space, but it's our space, right? It belongs to all of us and we all have a say. Whereas I think in the beginning, I didn't want to hear what they have to say. I just wanted them to follow the directions, right? Or follow my lead. Yeah.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from, Jerry. I feel exactly the same way for my first couple of years in the classroom. You come into the classroom with this mindset that you're there to um, to be the central figure that's leading the way, that's making sure everyone's making this that's growing and learning. And that's just not the case. That if you want to have a successful classroom, then you need to take a seat back and you need to understand that you're learning alongside children. You're not at the front of the classroom. Like, one thing that I did, I think like 3 years into it, when I started to see like I needed to change, because I felt myself getting like angry in the classroom. I felt myself not liking being in the classroom. So I had to say, hey, what am I doing to create this environment? And one thing that I did symbolically was just take my teacher desk and I just got rid of it. And I don't have a teacher desk. If you walk into my classroom, there is no teacher desk. There's just small group tables where we do small group rotations. But just that little symbol that I did, I think went a long way in like what I was trying to encapsulate with the environment, right? Like, putting students first is
Yeah.
is what we're here to do. That is our business. That's the business model that will make us successful as schools.
Yeah, for sure. They need to know that they're why we're here.
And I think that's a powerful idea, learning from kids. What is that? And Kev, I appreciate you sharing that about your desk. But what about everyone else? Like, what is a tangible moment, and thinking specifically about this pandemic times, where you feel you've taken that step to learn from the kids and learn alongside the kids?
You know, I think that during this pandemic time, it's um, more evident that every child is so different, right? And every child's situation is so different that we really do have to just listen to them, and we really need to let them know we see them for like whatever level and wherever they are, as in school and as a human being, you know, like we just have to let them know it's okay. It's okay to be not okay. It's okay to be trying your best. And if your best is only this much, then that's fine. I appreciate that. I'll take that, you know, like just let them know that wherever they're at, it is really fine. You know, we won't expect more. I mean, I'm not saying we don't have high expectations. I think what I've learned is we still have to expect a lot from the kids, because if we don't expect a lot from them, we're pretty much saying to them we don't care about you. But with those expectations has to come supports at the same time. So if we're expecting something from a child, we can't just say this is what you have to do. But what I think is my role is, then what do I need to do to get that child to that level of expectation? You know, I can't just say this or want this from a child without doing my part. And it's different for every child, right? I'm going to give way more time to some kids than I will to other children. And some people might say, well, that's not fair, but that is fair. It's what that child needs, you know?
That reminds me of two different examples, one having students and then one in distance learning. When I realized I need things, it was my advisory class, the class of 2018, and we were together for 4 years. And it was, I think they were sophomores, and something had happened. And I had put the blame on the students. And then one of the students called me out. They were like, but you're our advisor. And then it was like, yes, you're right. I represent you as much as you represent me. And then it became like, we're in this together. And that was one shift for me when, you know, started learning from the students, and also just how we're in this together. And now in distance learning, advisory as well, I felt like a student needed the space to do their own thing, but I knew that I needed to reach out, but I was like, no, the student needs space. The student needs space. And then finally, when I reached out, the student was like, you're just checking off your list. Like, what are you doing hitting me up? Like now you want to check on me? And I was like, oh, you know, the student just told me some truth. And then I said, you know what, you are right. But also it came from this. I wanted to give you space because I felt like that is what you needed. And then we started communicating, and the student then said, you know what, I'm sorry. I've pushed everyone away, and I don't want to push you because you did check on me. And I did tell you to leave me alone, and you did. But now you're coming back. And that obviously at first I was like, what, this kid, I'm trying to help, you know, it was that kind of emotions that I went through. And then I said, no, but he's also right. I could have reached out last week or the week before, even if he didn't respond. But then we talked it out, and now we're on the same page. The student is catching up, and it was just that, like, yeah, he needed space, but also as the adult checking in, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a teenager, and now we're working on it together. And I know the student will graduate. The student is getting work done, and yeah, it like you said, you know, some students need you to reach out more. Some students do need you to pull away a little, but also not forget. And I was glad that I didn't wait longer to reach out. So Thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to share this that has occurred recently. And at first it was tough, but now we're on the right track. And Kev always says, you know, communication is key.
Right.
And I feel like that's where I'm at with the student.
And you know, I think with hard students or hard kids that we think we sometimes as humans take it personally, like their behavior is an attack on us or whatever, but we just have to remember that, I mean, they have things that they're trying to work through, right? And we need to be those people that they feel the most comfortable with sometimes, that they can come to us and yeah, maybe that they're taking it out on us, but we can't see it that way. We have to see it as, you know, we just have to be there for them, whatever that means, right? So that they can get through their problems or their issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of times teachers, we take it personally, right? And you know, we shouldn't. I mean, we should really just step up more to help them. I think be there for them a little bit more. Mm-hmm.
That's a good reminder that we always have to just remember that kids are still developing their prefrontal cortex, right?
Yes.
And, and with that, if we can remember that, then I think that we can be
Mm-hmm.
a lot more graceful towards the actions that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes can come off as offensive. And just
Mm-hmm.
remember that kids are speaking their truth, and their truth also matters in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that sometimes might um, feel awkward or weird against our truth, we have to remember that we're co-creating that space, right? And when we are co-creating that space, it's really important to listen, and not just listen to words, but listen to body language, listen to maybe what is not being said. You know, sometimes I think that in a virtual world, I get so frustrated when kids won't answer a question, and I'm sitting there in front of a screen waiting for someone to answer. And I'll start getting frustrated. And I'll be like, why aren't they answering? And then I'm like, okay, if I want them to answer this question about this reading, maybe I need to go back to the thinking map that we were creating together and have that up so that they can look at it. So just thinking about what supports do they need to answer. And I think that in a digital space, like you were talking about earlier, we can get much more creative than maybe we have had the opportunity to do so in the past. So I'm looking forward to continuing to learn about what we're doing now and applying that to when we're back in person, whenever that may be.
Yeah, I think, you know, we were on, or we are on a good start because we looked at our curriculum, right, to revamp our curriculum. And I think we can even revamp it even more, both language arts and math. And I think we're realizing as we try to redo of the curriculum, we're seeing that the way that we did it, or the way that the programs are doing it, are not always the best way for our kids, right? Especially now, like you said, because we're having a hard time getting kids to respond or to show work. So it's just making us rethink what are some better ways to reach all kids, right? Not just some kids, but all kids. And going back to why I use those Jamboards is because I love being able to see their work in real time. You know, I love being able to see them working on those Jamboards and be able to say, hey, you know, Kev, can you go back and fix this? Or, hey, I really like the way you did this, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
it's just another tool, right? That's helping them to be successful and helping me help them be successful, I guess.
Because it's about individualized supports, because I think it comes down to those individualized relationships, which is at the heart of social emotional learning. I believe it's not a curriculum, it's not anything that's diagnosed that you can then test a kid in. It's this is those small moments that you have, those extra moments after the Zoom session where you stay on with the kid and you talk story, and you get to really know what was going on. And I'm fascinated, Jerry Ann, if you don't mind me sharing, because of the fact that your daughter, who like we shared earlier, if you haven't listened to the earlier Maestro's Vibe, check that out. She also shared about this social emotional learning, this idea, and how I think it does underpin everything that we do. and how we revamp our curriculum and how we revamp, especially as we start to consider transitioning and moving forward past this time and we start thinking about transitioning back into the schools. So do you have any hopes for us as we bring our learnings back into schools to a sense of normalcy?
Sense of normalcy. I'm not sure that's going to be for a while, but I guess my hope would be that, you know, as we come back into our classrooms, face to face, that we continue to look at how we can change the way that we do things for students, right? And that we really, really at this time, especially pay attention to their hearts before we worry about their academics so much, you know, like check in with them, make sure they're okay, make sure that their families are okay, and let them know that we care about them. And then think about how we can make our curriculum, I think, just more engaging, you know, more student centered, more where they're having a voice in what they're learning, and really listen to them, really listen to them. Because I know I have been very, um, I've been, I guess, times where I've asked kids questions, but then not really listened to their answers. You know, I just asked them the question, but not really listened, really, really heard what they said and then acted upon that. So I'm hoping that we could be a little bit more mindful of those kinds of things when we come back, you know, letting kids have a say about their learning and listening to them and taking some of their ideas or taking some of the ways that they learn best and, you know, work with that. I think that would be really important.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yes, work with them. I wanted to mention my 10-year-old sister who Kev reminded me of when he says, you know, sometimes you post a question and it's just silence, like no one says anything. She recently shared with me that she's part of this writers group. They meet after school on Friday. And in her group, the three the three girls with the two writers that are supposed to help them, the three girls were the quietest people in her class, her being one of them. And one of the writers was asking, so what should be our name? What should be our name? And it was just crickets, crickets. And I was asking her, like, how come you didn't say anything? How come, you know, why didn't you speak up? And she's like, I just didn't want to. I just wanted to listen. I was thinking. I don't know. I didn't want to be the first to talk. And that reminded me of my students who don't always share or anything, and also took me back to that check-in that you said, right? Like checking in, making sure who is responding, and then acknowledging those responses, because in that check-in you can know how our students feeling. And after our conversation about them being silent, and I said, so what did the instructor do? You know, what was the prompts? Well, she said, he was saying, well, this is a very quiet group. And, you know, she said he wasn't being mean to any of us. He just kept talking and kind of answering. And I thought it was funny. She said, at the end of it all, I had a good time. So like she didn't say much. And then their name was like Silent Writers or something became their name because they were all silent. But she said that it was still a good experience. So there's also that part, right? That sometimes our students might not share, but they are taking something away. And so I just want to give a shout out to Itzel, my 10-year-old sister, who is quite the opposite of Xochitl, who is 12, who is a talkative person on the Zoom, who says, I'm like the first one to share sometimes. So, you know, knowing that and having those students, being patient, and also just knowing that we don't know what's happening behind the screen or how they're feeling. And so just for us to be patient and to be excited about what we are doing, right? Like this instructor, he was excited, he kept going. And although the kids didn't say much, her response was that it was still a good time. So there's,
You never know what they're thinking, right? Unless you ask them.
that too. Yep.
I love the way that you've also changed the way that you do check-ins. Like for example, on one of your jam boards that I really loved was you had all of your students sitting in a circle on post-it notes, and there was a talking piece that would then move around as students shared in the morning. Could you tell the listeners out there, where did that idea come from, and did you find it to be successful?
Well, we were doing check-ins in the morning where I would just like call on kids and say, okay, you know, Kevin, you go first. And then I would have you call somebody else, but what was happening was, one, it was taking a long time because the kids didn't know who was going to be called. And then we had to wait for them to unmute their mic, which sometimes takes a while. But also it was, I think, hard on the kids not knowing that their time was coming, so they couldn't really get ready for their turn. They weren't, like, some of them were kind of not thinking about it or doing something else. So with the circle, it now gives people a chance to see, oh, I'm coming up in like the next one or in 3, right? They know when their time is, and when that talking piece moves, they know it's their turn. I asked them which one they like better, if they like that Jamboard with the circle so that they can visually see when it's their turn, or did they like the cold call, And all of them said no, they did not like the cold call. They don't want to go back to that. So I said, okay, fair enough. We will stick with the circle, Yeah.
Unanimous. And listening to that voice, you listening to that unanimous voice, I think builds a strong culture. It builds a strong culture, and you've also brought something about culture to our little circle here. A book, literature, a piece of literature called Culturized Every Student, which I believe is about turning kids into yogurt, correct?
Exactly. I read this book, I guess it was a couple summers ago, and it's called Culturized Every Student, Every Day, Whatever It Takes. I think that's what it's called. And literally it talks about how schools, every single person at the school, adults and children, have to be involved in building that school culture. And it has to be where that maybe decisions are made. I think one of the quotes was something about decisions are made through democracy, but implementation has to be where it's autocratic, like everybody has to be on board for culture to change at the school. And it talks about how, as educators, we need to be like the champions for all our students, not some of our students, all of our students. And we have to speak up for all of our students all the time, whether they're the kids who are high flyers or the kids who are struggling. I mean, we just have to be that compassionate, empathetic adult in their lives every single day. And that we have to expect excellence from them, all the time. We just have to let them know that we believe in them and that they can do it, and we are going to be there for them. Not like, okay, you are struggling, so never mind, you don't have to do this assignment, but you are going to do this assignment. So like, not like choosing assignments based on kids' ability or not ability, but everybody having that high sense of excellence to be able to do all assignments with the teacher's support. And then they say something about carrying the banner. Like, we have to be the ones that are speaking up and showcasing our school, like, always being the person that talks about our school and talks about the school culture and makes it a great place, like always not putting down, anything about our school or about the school climate, but always talking about the great things that are happening there. And then I think they also talk about how you have to be the merchant of hope, you know, like never giving up on the kids and never giving up on the adults at your school. You know, just if adults are struggling, then we should all step up into leadership roles to help adults to grow in whatever area that is. So not only with students, but with other adults, you know, we should always be the people that are helping them to evolve and to change, to become better. So I'm really about that. So I thought that was a great book. And I think it'd be a great book for all schools to read together at the beginning of the school year, you know, or in the summer before school starts.
That's great advice. That's amazing. My PLC, my learning community on Wednesday, we had a heart to heart where we all just kind of shared how we were feeling and talk about some isms that we do see, and when we see them, like what are some ways to help. And so we said, well, as an English department, we are committing to like have each other's back. And when someone says something, to pose questions, or to help and elevate that conversation. If a teacher wants to share something, for us to ask more about it instead of just like silent and shut it down. So I really appreciate that you mentioned that. That sounds like an amazing book. I'm definitely interested in reading it. And I, like you said, we represent our school. So however we talk about it, our students are listening, our community members are listening. And so looking at the glass half full instead of half empty, I think that there are so many success stories in our schools that as humans, sometimes we focus on the negative, but I believe that if we start focusing on the positives, we can then fix whatever we feel that needs more work. So I just really am thankful for you sharing that book, and just the way that you summarized it. It's super important, and it's something that we can definitely apply any day, any month, but definitely a must read based on your summary. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you bring up such a good point. Like, if we don't share our stories about what's happening in our schools, then those stories are going to be written by other folks, and we don't know what those stories may be, positive nor negative. But with us, we have the ability to share the positive stories that are happening at each of our sites, and then internally questioning practices that might not be the best for kids. So I always believe that you internally struggle, but outwardly you show up and you show the community that you're in it together. And with that, Geri, I am just so lucky to be on your team, to continue to learn from you each and every day. I get to go into school and look at our master class of social and emotional learning, and Geri has posted, I want to say, at least 100 different resources, and we're only in second quarter here. So she's always on the precipice, as we say, of what is new out there. So for all of our listeners, and Geri, I know that maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm going to say to all of our listeners, if you're ever looking for a particular title to teach a particular social and emotional learning skill, reach out to Geri. She has them in the bag already, and she carries it with her.
I'll just share our SEL masterclass with them.
There you go. Yes, we would love to share that. I think it'd be great to get more educators to collaborate, especially in these times.
For sure. Yes.
Send your PayPal to Calabash Classroom.
Oh, Kayla, you would love that.
Send her that PayPal, and because teachers do it for the money. This has been a great time.
Fun. Love it.
This has been a killer time because we get together and share a lot. And I think culture matters. Culture matters here in this little hui that we've built here. It matters at your school. And even if you're like myself and you're having a very difficult time, looking to see the future and the long-term marathon that we're all running together, I think is a really important thing, especially beginning years, like you said, Karina. But we got to start wrapping up here. I don't want to take too much of your beautiful Aloha Sunday here. Do you have any advice you'd like to share with your own kids, your students, or our listeners out there as a veteran of this community?
I think the advice I want to leave people, especially teachers, is that we have to not stop learning. We have to not stop getting better, right? I mean, we just have to keep learning from each other and reading professional readings. I think that as a teacher, you can't just get comfortable in what you're doing. You really have to change every year because your students change every year. You cannot keep doing the same thing year after year and expect it to be the best for kids. So I think, just keep going and keep learning. Don't stop trying to become better in your craft. And also, I hope that we all are merchants of hope for our students every single day.
And thank you for being a hope in our community. You are truly Kona royalty. And I just want to echo that sentiment. Before we say a hui ho, this has been another Maestro's Vibe. This is Kev on the ones and twos.
Ali'i. Really? All right. For all these years, you've been Ali'i. The Kahakai Ali'i, yeah?
That's the one.
It really is. It really, wow. Okay. Sorry, Karina. I didn't mean to cut. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good, Juan. That was awesome. I love how you brought it back because, I mean, you've been at the same school for these many years, and it's just such a pleasure to keep learning from you and for you sharing everything that you've shared with us, for spending your Sunday with us. We appreciate you so much. This is Karina Hernandez, and it's been another amazing Maestro's Vibe episode.
Thanks. Really appreciate it. To all our listeners, rate us, review us, leave us 5 stars. If not, all of us here might think you don't appreciate education. We hope.